Hey, what's up? It's Brenton Matizak from Latitude IT here. I'm the digital marketing manager and also editor of the Cyber People podcast. And you're probably wondering, why can I hear your voice right now and not Will's? And that is because Will didn't hold the microphone for about the first 10 minutes. And then also, once he did, he held it the wrong way. So I've tried to recover the audio as best as possible. But if you're wondering why the audio sounds a little bit strange this episode, so sorry about that, guys. I'll make sure Will doesn't do it in the next one. But other than that, have a good time listening.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Cyber People podcast. I am delighted to be joined this evening by Vish Nair. Vish, I would love to tell everyone about you, but it's better if it comes from the horse's mouth. Who are you and what do you do?
Good evening, Will. Great to be here. My name is Vish. I have been in the IT industry for at least 22 years now, predominantly in information security and cybersecurity. Uh, I have played major roles, but the last role that I played was at the CISO for the New South Wales Electoral Commission, where I was the end-to-end accountable person for running the election securely.
Okay. Which you make it sound like it's just a sort of simple task, but I'm sure it's must be one of the most stressful roles in cybersecurity. I mean, that organization must have an enormous target on its back.
Absolutely, yeah. It is. It is one of the most visible agency for public sector, and more than that, if the outcomes are not delivered appropriately or as expected, it throws into question their entire democracy, and that's a huge risk for the for the entire state and the country in general. So yeah, it was an amazing gig. It was an amazing challenge to work on. It was extremely stressful, no doubt about that. But there were the outcomes and the results were very satisfactory.
Was it
Satisfactory.
was it consistently stressful, or only really during those electoral times?
It started as being stressful during election times, but then the strategy that I was working on was to have a more consistent um, readiness of cybersecurity across the organization, irrespective whether we run an election or not. So that was meant that we had to bring in a bit of a change in the way that we worked in the organization. So bringing that change and running it and implementing it meant that I would be stressful, irrespective whether there was an election or not. The stress level just increased during election. I'll put it that way.
All right, good. So, what would you say were the key challenges, and what did you learn as a result of overcoming those challenges or being confronted by them?
In the past role, do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. In your most recent role, I mean, it sounds like a very difficult role. You must have learned a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Discomfort is where the growth is. So they tell me it sounds like a very uncomfortable role.
Uh, the first challenge that I found, which I had to overcome at the organization, was the view of what cybersecurity portrayed across the organization. So cybersecurity was viewed as a support unit, as a unit which you call uh, if you want to test something, test readiness. So that was a major, just in my view, just one very small aspect of cybersecurity. So I had to educate the organization of how to view it, cybersecurity as more a partner in what you're doing, and more than a partner, I think an enabler. So you could use cybersecurity to increase and enhance your services itself. So that discussion was a major thing. The second thing that I wanted had to overcome was the staffing itself, the size of this cybersecurity team. Since the prevalent view was that we just need cybersecurity as and when needed kind of thing. So the small staff was sufficient. But as I brought in the changes to the organization and the way that we were looking at it, that meant that I had to increase the staff, overall organizational structure for the information security, and finding the right people and retaining them, which was even more important, was the other challenge that I had to overcome. The third, and in my view, one of the most important one was how to establish their collaborative operations across other agencies within the public sector, both New South Wales and federal. So I had to establish that relationship with various agencies, which was essential to ensure that I was able to do my work properly. Because in my view, you share the risk to make it more effective to manage. So I was working very closely with Cyber New South Wales and ACSC and other federal agencies. So helping using their assistance to ensure the assurance for the organization.
Okay. So there is a very high level of cooperation between state and federal government.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And it's not an adversarial relationship. It's a relationship characterized by sort of partnership and cooperation.
Very much so. Very much so, yes.
That's encouraging. That's encouraging. I mean, I don't know how much you're at liberty to discuss, Vish. So if my questions are inappropriate, by all means, tell me. But I'm just wondering how much foreign actor activity do you see in a role like that? Like, is there a lot of attempted manipulation from overseas entities at state government electoral level?
I would prefer to give a bit generic answer for this, if it's okay, Will.
Of course.
I'll put it this way. As part of the threat intel and the threat briefings that I used to receive from the various agencies, both federal and state, um, the common thread and the common factor that we used to receive was that electoral processes are among the most attractive for the malicious actors globally, not only for us. So yes, due to that, we had lots of attentions towards us, unnecessary and unwarranted attentions, obviously. But then it was there. I can't go into specifics of what where this comes from, but then you may be able to draw your own conclusions from that. The other thing that if you look at globally, whenever there is a major elections, the nation state actors increase their activities, and sometimes you might find that some other states or jurisdictions become collateral damages as part of the testing aspects for those activities. So that aspect was also discussed with us. But the key aspect here is key point to discuss here is in an electoral process, even if you have an impact, a breach, or anything, or not, even even if it throws a doubt or a cloud of suspicion on the processes, that in itself is enough to make a damage. So it throws a high reputational and a perception risk, and that's something that it's very difficult to come out of and counter. So we had to be on our front foot always on the offense, and working very closely with our partners.
Of course, yes. I was just listening to a podcast recently that was talking about Russian troll farms and the influence that they have had in the American electoral process. And of course, it's not really a sort of tangible cyber thing that you can kind of defend against because it's social engineering on social media platforms. But it's fascinating that degree to which manipulation can occur on not just a statewide but a nationwide basis, and there's really no way of defending against it. But anyway, there's so many rabbit holes we can go down, and I'm famous for my tangents. I'm terrible at time management, and I know that we would need to get through quite a few things today.
No worries.
Today we're going to be talking about the various paths to information security and cybersecurity, which is a very interesting topic, and one of the topics that we talk about in almost every episode, because the mission of this podcast is not just to showcase the remarkable men and women of the Australian cybersecurity industry, but it's also to inspire people who are maybe on the outside looking in and thinking, okay, is cybersecurity an option for me from a career perspective? And if so, how do I go about it? How do I get into this amazing industry? And how do I find an opportunity for myself once I've become educated, or something along those lines? So it would be really good to understand, Vish, how you found your way into cybersecurity, and what your advice would be for those people who are keen to get involved but don't really know how to go about it.
Yep, more than happy to discuss about that. This is a topic which is very close to my heart as well. Um, uh, the way that I look at it, cyber industry is a very much us versus them kind of a game. So we cyber practitioners are form a part of a community which is very global in nature, and our adversaries have their own community. So we need more and more people to be part of the industry to make it more effective. So whatever I can do to help that, I'm more than happy to participate. And just to give a background of how I entered the industry, now I started off by training. I'm an electronics engineer. So I finished my graduation in electronics engineering, and the first role that I took on was at a very small organization based in Bombay, India, where which was I think pioneering email service as a service kind of a thing. So we used to set up mailboxes for multiple organizations, and my job was to go to different organizations, set up their modems. We used to have those modems all over the places at that time, set them up, have a connection to our servers, and configure their user clients and everything else. So from there on, I started to move into more of the directory services, which was very, very key for me, and which led into the discussions about identity access management. Uh, so that I would say that I've been in identity. I've been started off in the identity access management area since from the first year of my career itself. So it was a area that I really liked because what I felt was access management is like the key to your home. It's a key to your door. So if you manage who gets access to your home, at what time and till what time, so that mentality of managing that risk to your of access to the critical assets it was very, very key to me. And I have always been I had a very great manager who said that we should bring the controls to the closest as much close as possible to the data or the aspect that we are trying to protect. So it was in a way his own version of having layered defense, and those kind of discussions sort of launched me into the career of information security. I've been now as a practitioner for nearly 22 years, as I said earlier, and I've worked all over the globe. Predominantly, I was fortunate to work in US. I was fortunate to work in Europe, some areas, and Middle East as well before I came to Australia. And across all the areas, the pain areas are common. Everyone have the same issues that they're fighting with. Everyone has the same challenges that they were looking at. So it more or less affirmed my thought that yeah, this is the way to this is where I want to be. This is where I want to make my and help organizations as much as possible. The what I also found was that I would not call myself a technology CISO per se. So I come in more from a governance and risk management area, and I find that it is more what the business wants to understands better and wants to
Yeah.
listen to. And I sort of honed my skills around those areas and have been I would say fairly successful in doing that. So that's a bit about my background. If it helps.
Okay. All right. So if you like looking back on your career, if you were to do it all over again, would you have changed anything? Would you have focused on different things? Would you have I mean, you mentioned electronic engineering or electrical
Yep.
engineering.
Yeah. Electronics.
Um,
Yeah.
okay. So does that include like IT? Is there like, were you a
No.
coder? Were you an engineer?
No,
You,
you won't believe. The first time that I touched my computer was after I had completed my electronics engineering. The first job that I took, that was the first time that I seen or touched a computer. So I was not directly doing that. And in those days, unlike today, there was no focused computer science courses. There was computer engineering, but it's more into hardware aspects only. So,
Embedded systems and all that sort of thing.
so yeah, the
Right.
opportunities were lesser. But these days we have very focused trainings on that. I think much higher opportunities available these days.
Okay. And your background, you said that your path to CISO was more a kind of along the risk
Yes.
governance path. Um, Applying those controls,
Yep.
uh, you mentioned identity access management, for example.
Yep.
So, does that present challenges if you're leading a team of technicians? If you're coming into that role and you are from that risk compliance background, does that sometimes create challenges in terms of winning the respect of the engineers, the techies, and things like that? Because you don't come from a coding background, and do you know what I mean? Like,
I totally understand what to say.
yeah,
You're right, Bill. There's a bit of a education and higher efforts required on my side to bridge that gap. What I find is that technicians, technical experts, for no fault of theirs, would only communicate in the technical terms. But what that leads to is they would be only comfortable talking to their peers. And when I present them with opportunities to talk beyond their area, they find themselves out of the water. So I encourage them to look at it from that perspective, to expand their scope. And from my side, I take an effort to learn technologies as much as required. So I think it is. I always say that I learn myself enough to not be fooled by a supplier or a vendor.
yeah,
As far as and then I can point it to my technical expert. I think that's the way it's worked, and that helps because they see that I am also putting my effort to learn something, and they are being given opportunity to expand their scope. But some people prefer to be technicians, and I respect that and leave it at that.
okay, all right. Because this is a very interesting topic. I mean, it's something I always ask everyone who comes on the show. How
Mhm.
did you find your way into security? Because there are so many different pathways,
Yes.
and I really want to emphasize that to people who are listening who are not in the industry but are thinking, okay, how can I go about it? Because the more paths there are into cyber, the more able we'll be able to attract, you know, uh, exciting new blood, exciting talent into the industry.
Yep.
I was talking to the daughter of a family friend last night who was thinking about what choices she should make from a university perspective. She's very interested in cybersecurity. She's very interested in financial services. She's also very interested in AI. And
Mm.
she was saying to me, what was my opinion? What do I think she should study? And she said, well, Will, should I go straight into cyber if there is the possibility to do that from a tertiary education perspective? Or should I be studying IT first, engineering or something of that nature, and then move into cyber as a kind of subset or subspecialization? Or should I choose a course that enables me to just get straight stuck into cyber from day one? And I said to her, and you can tell me what you think about this,
Mhm.
Vish, and what advice you would have given her had you been in that conversation last night. But what I said to her was, it's probably going to be advantageous to begin with IT, to learn how to code, to understand how um, software is designed and developed and delivered and so forth, applications and so forth, and then of course how to secure them thereafter. It's probably going to be easier for you if you're going to be working with technical teams and so forth to have that background and to be able to, as you said, call bullshit and stand your ground and so forth, not have the wall pulled over your eyes.
Mm.
Do you think that was the right advice to give? What advice would you give? Someone comes to you and says, Vish, I really want to get into cyber. Let's say they're a teenager, they've just finished high school. What would you say? What advice would you give them?
I believe that you don't need to have formal education in IT or cyber to enter into cyber industry. I've worked with individuals, very very strong individuals who have spent nearly 2 decades running baristas, and made a shift into the cyber industry. I used to tell him that you would move from coffee to cyber, so nothing has changed. It's the same for you. So it's still accelerating. But what we need in the industry is three. In my view, there are 3 or 4 skills that you need to have. One is an eagerness to learn, and adapt to the new technologies or thinking that's in the industry. That's number one. Second is a willingness to listen. Uh, that's very very key, because if you don't do that, you will not be able to learn and improve yourselves. The third one is in the initial few years of a career, you would need to struggle very very hard. So be prepared to put in those hard hours, burning the midnight oil and everything else. So that flexibility should be something that you should be ready to take on. And one of the things that you need to have is an analytical mind. Be it a technical type of a cyber practitioner or a non-technical, you would need to have this analytical skills. You need to make a sense out of what's happening. What are you seeing over there? You don't need someone who is just copying what was done in the other by someone earlier. So that's very very key. These 3 or 4 skills would really equip you to be a good cyber practitioner, in my view. And that could be found by either a STEM graduate or anyone else as well. As long as you have those appetite to learn and do that, I think you should be able to do it. And one of the biggest skills that I would always I would always say that people should have at all levels of a cyber career is communication skills. Because someone asked me, do I need to have technical skills to be a CISO? I said, yes, you need to have, but in my mind, you need to have a better communication skill than technology skill, because you need to translate the aspect to people who really matter, and also understand from them and translate it to your team on how to provide services. So communication skills are paramount importance. So I'm sorry I went around a bit, but then in my view, I don't believe that you need to be trained to enter into cyber.
Okay. Just a quick question, and then we'll move on to the next topic, which is equally fascinating. So, have you ever in your career taken on someone who was a total blank canvas, a newbie, someone who had no previous cyber experience? And what was it about that person that made you give them that shot?
As I mentioned, I mentioned about the person who was working who moved from making coffee to cyber. Um, he was an amazing individual. The reason that I really enjoyed working with him was he always came to the office with a smile on his face. I mean, he was always smiling. He was always eager to do things. He wanted to get involved in wherever he could. He wanted to see what other teams are doing, so that willingness to learn was always there. And he was very willing to go out of the way to learn things on his own, put in extras, and then and show the results. I He was a TAFE engineer who worked for me for around 6 to 8 months, and in fact, he set up the phishing campaigns for me, and 2 campaigns that he ran were extremely successful. And even the board was extremely happy with the outcomes from those campaigns. So he didn't have any experience of cyber, but the results that he delivered were phenomenal.
And he was massively high on caffeine, so he was able to do the first responder rota quite easily.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but then yeah, he always promised that he can bring his barista over and make some coffee for me. He never got it, unfortunately.
All right, so Vish, what would be really good to understand that one of the sort of, I know that we wanted to cover 3 topics here tonight, the various routes to information security and cybersecurity careers, which we've covered. The second topic is the changing roles of the CISO,
Yep.
which was very intriguing because I really don't know what you meant by that. So I'm very curious to understand exactly what you mean. That's a very interesting concept.
I just wanted to give a bit of a background or a history to what I meant over there. Now, I don't know if many of you know the first CISO role that was ever First person to be named a CISO across the globe was Steve Katz. He was the first CISO who was brought in around 1997 at Citigroup. And before that, we never had that role of CISO. The people would generally be network security managers or IT security managers or something like that. So that would sort of put them into smaller boxes of what they are able to do or what their circle of influence is. That term of CISO is very unique. One, it has a C in it, so basically you have and an O in it. So basically you have part of CXOs. So by default you get a bit of an attention over there.
Yeah.
And by putting that both those terms over there, it means that you are part of a broader, a much more higher thing, not just managing the nuts and bolts. So that was a very big distinction that was brought in that by that role. Uh, Later, around 2002 time frames, we had the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which came in the US, post the Enrons and the WorldCom issues. So what that act brought in was a clear structure, clear organizational structure for information security. It tried to define what the responsibilities of the CISO will be vis-a-vis other board members. So that was important, and from that point on, there's been a steady improvement of how the role has matured. Um, for a period of nearly 15 to 20, from 2002 till last few years, it's been predominantly seen as still within the services area, within an IT area. So it's a still technical role. But over the period of last 4 or 5 years, we are seeing a shift of CISOs being seen more a representative of information services to the business and the board, and vice versa as well. So that's a very big shift that's happening. So what it really means is that um, you are taking information and risk information from the services organization and translating that to the business in a controls discussions or risk discussions, and bringing back those decisions that's made at that level back to the implementers level. So that's a shift that's happening now. So effectively, what's happening is that the board looks at the CISO as a chief advisor for anything related to cyber, and that's a major shift if you look at it. So it's similar to having a financial officer, or similar to having a corporate risk officer. So that that change that's coming in sort of makes the seat on the board much more formal for these CISOs. So you get part of cybersecurity gets discussed at very high levels, at very initial stages. So if it's mergers and acquisitions that's happening, cybersecurity gets discussed as part of the due diligence discussions itself. It's not an afterthought. Or if you are looking to expand your services to other jurisdictions, again cybersecurity and the regulations come part of that. So this shift is very key. But still, there are lots of practitioners, peer practitioners like myself, who still look at CISOs being technical in nature, which I don't completely agree to. Yes, you need to have technical skills, but you don't need to be completely technical. You need to have, as I mentioned earlier, you need to have stakeholder management. You need to have communication skills. You need to understand what the board wants, what the business means. So that, in my view, is a more well-rounded CISO, someone who can translate the information services KPIs and metrics to business metrics and outcomes. So that's what I meant by that. I had a one of my previous bosses. When I was working with Emirates Airlines in Dubai, he said that I can get a baker to come and run this department for you. So
Because he gets up early. He gets up early.
I felt very trivialized by that. I felt, oh, no, that means that my skills are of no use, and I took high offense to it. But over the period, I have understood what it really meant. He meant that a baker understands what the customer wants. Baker is able to communicate with the customer and then give what the customer needs at the time when he needs it. So that was a clear distinction. So you don't need to and baker generally get someone else to make the bread. He may not make it as himself or herself as well. So you need to get things done. You need to communicate them. You need to translate the requirements effectively and manage the show. I think that's what you need. I think that's why now I understand what he meant by that.
Okay. So when he initially said that, you were quite offended?
Oh, well, very much.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
I felt
Did you
very,
let
very
your offense be known, or did you keep it to yourself? Have you since gone back to him and said, "Hey, listen, I
no.
understand what you meant"?
It was a different era altogether. You
All
rarely
right.
question that, and
Okay.
it was a frustration or a feelings shared by most of my peers, and I think all of my peers. So it was a shared thing. So we felt that none of us were technically qualified.
Okay. So did the change in that? So in 1997, you said was the first CISO. So was that what was the idea behind it? Was the idea to elevate the cyber security conversation and make it more of a sort of operational risk focused
It was.
business? Okay. All right.
It was, and it also speaks a lot about the individual. Steve Katz is a pioneer in the industry, so it speaks a lot about what thinking and the influence that he had in his organization. So
Okay.
you need to have that. You need to have a receptiveness in the organization to accept the changes as well. So I think it was a mutual. It was it's both at the cities and as well as Steve's and
Okay. All right. And in an ideal world, then, Vish, who do you think the ideal person for the CISO to report into is?
The question that's always there. I've been asked this question many times.
Yeah. Has your answer changed at all?
No, I've
Okay.
not changed. In my view, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
It all depends on the organization. So you need you need um, you need to have a sponsor who's able to understand what cybersecurity means to the organization and the impact of not taking the adequate steps. So you need to have that kind of level. Second thing is you need to understand. You need to have someone who has is able to exert his influence across the organization. So that's key. So be it CIO or be it a CFO or an operational COO, either ways, whoever has the best reach across the organization is so it's better to be with them. And the third thing is you need to have build a relationship and it's a two-man game. It's you and your boss together fielding those questions. So if both of you complement each other, it doesn't matter who you're reporting to, as long as both of you can play the game together.
Okay. All right. I mean, as a layman, I guess my thought was, well, if you're reporting into a CIO, how does that work? Is that not a conflict? Because to a certain degree, you have to hold the CIO accountable and put his or her feet over the fire.
Yes.
And, so it's like you're marking your boss's homework.
It is.
Yeah.
I have been in those positions as well. But as I said, if your boss understands why you're doing this, and it's not a personal thing, it's more beneficial to the organization, I think that should be sufficient. So it needs that kind of a mature level of maturity for the organization, for that CIO as well, or whoever you're reporting to. I also believe that it is always good to have sort of a dotted to the person that the your boss reports to. So in a way, if you are sort of forming a committee, if you have your boss's boss as the chair of the committee, you have you can better influence those whatever you have in mind as well. So it takes a bit of an organizational manipulation and management required for that.
Okay. So it really comes down to the people, the individuals. It's very subjective. So you couldn't really come up with an objective sort of, okay, this would be the ideal structure.
No, I mean, during my initial days of my career, I also always felt that the best place for information security would be under risk office.
Okay.
But you don't have CROs across major industries at a high level. So you would have it in the finance sectors predominantly. You might have in some of the other areas as well, but not in services, for example. The most common relationship is under the CIO.
Yeah.
So if it works,
It
it
makes
works.
sense.
Yeah,
I get it. Okay. So you have to make do with what there is. I mean, yeah, because a lot of organizations don't seem to be that fussed about risk.
exactly. That's another
Yeah,
aspect as well.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the other thing is, if you try to make something out of it, you might break something as well,
Of course,
and that might serve as detrimental for you.
of course. No. That makes sense. Um, yeah. Look, it's an interesting one because I know that in other markets, like America, for example, it's a lot more common to see CISOs reporting to other people.
Mm, mm.
COOs, CFOs, CROs, CEO itself reporting into the board itself.
Yeah.
That's not uncommon. Listen, I know we don't have a huge amount of time left, but if you're game, I would like to tackle the question of how do you plan and deliver a successful cybersecurity uplift?
Yeah, it will take a half an hour and so on. But then I will give few bits of what I feel as required for it. So, um, the couple of items in it. Well, number one is understand. First thing is the cyber uplift program should not be about technology. It should be about what the business requires, what are the current risks in the organization, what are the regulatory requirements, and also looking at what the future opportunities are for the organization, and build your uplift program according to that. You use the industry guidance, basically the technology guidance to sort of structure it, but then it should be predominantly driven by business requirements and the regulatory requirements and the risks. Uh, I in my uplift programs, as I said, I've tried to make it a bit broader. Keep it. You would need to have some of the process aspects identified. You need to look at the technology aspects of it. You need to look at the people aspects of it, and you use the funds appropriately. You look at what the risks are, and then appropriately use the funds for it. The key three aspects that you need to look at for the success of the delivery of uplift program. One is you need to bring everyone together. That means that your peers, your executives, your team, all of them should be part of the journey. It should not be something that you yourself wanted to do on your own. You would lose steam immediately. You need to have a sponsor in your executive team. Ideally, your boss. In my view, it should be boss plus someone else as well in the executive team. And thirdly, you need to, and I think in my view, that's one of the things that not generally looked at. In my view, very key to have a good financial review and a procurement advisor as part of your team. Because none of the uplift programs would be successful if you don't look at how the returns on investments are effectively achieved, or how the procurement exercise would work. Because procurement itself would eat up a lot of time for you. So you need to be very careful and mindful of those aspects. I would leave it at that right now, but if you want to ask any further on that, I'm more than happy to explain.
No, that's very interesting. So, is your starting point then to speak to the business, take a step back, understand what good looks like for them? Because of course, I would imagine that very often this is the case. Correct me if I'm wrong. The risks that the business cares about and the actual risks are often quite different.
Correct.
So there's a whole heap of risks that are actually real risks that you need to make them aware of, that are then incorporated into the uplift program. Because I would imagine there's probably only a few risks that they really care about.
Yeah, you're right.
So
it's more, as I said, it's more bringing them together in a journey kind of thing. So you use the workshopping to understand or dig deeper into the risks. So understanding query their understanding of the risks. And I spent a lot of time doing that. So individually with all of my peers, try to understand what they want from cybersecurity. What do they expect? And what is it that worked? What is it that didn't work? And build that SWOT kind of a thinking for each of your peer or each of your stakeholder, and use those outcomes to drive your strategy. By doing so, you're achieving two things. One is you're making it relevant to the organization. So you're not talking something that's completely coming out of the blue or what you want to do on your own. And the second aspect is you have already got a supporter. because you have listened to someone and brought that aspect into your strategy. So your success is merely already started in a way. So yes, I agree that everyone have their own individual view of risk, but we bring them together and build a story out of it. I think most of the CISO's responsibilities going forward would be storytelling. You need to build a story from each of the risks and tell and be able to convince of what is the impact of why we are doing this. And by doing so, you can maybe combine multiple risks together and have one theme or one category built out of it, and use that to build your strategy. That works better.
Absolutely, and something else that we can unpack probably on another date is how you, because I would imagine that one of the most important things. I was recently asking a CISO what are the sort of top 3 skills of a successful CISO, and the CISO said to me, the top 3 skills are communication, communication, communication.
Absolutely.
And I can totally relate to that. You know, there's no point building this incredible cybersecurity function if no one really knows about it, no one really understands it and feels as though they are an integral part of it.
Exactly.
And that's really the key, right? To make the user feel like they are the biggest vulnerability, but also the greatest line of defense.
Absolutely.
But that's a topic for another day. Vish, I hope you haven't felt rushed. I know that it's a lot to talk about in 40 minutes, but you can always come back and we can always unpack a lot of these topics to a greater degree if you feel so inclined. But I really appreciate you coming on the show. What's the best way for people to get hold of you if they want to pick your brains or get some advice on how to begin the first steps towards a successful cybersecurity career?
I am very active on LinkedIn, so you can search me on LinkedIn. That's number one. And my email address as well. I'm happy to leave my email address with you. And it's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
It's okay. I'm
right.
more than happy to answer questions wherever required. So
all right, Vish.
I am happy to do it.
Listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks a lot. It was enlightening, insightful, and I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Take care.
Thank
See you soon.
See you.
Bye.